morning prime. Tell us a little bit more about this multidisciplinary task team that has been established. What exactly is their task, and how do they plan to prevent these killings?
Well, I think it's important to firstly go back and look at the trend in South Africa, especially during election time or towards elections. You'll then realize that there would be a number of political killings or assassinations, and in most instances they would happen, unfortunately, in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. And I think one must actually commend the action that has been taken by the police minister to say, now that some few people have been killed already, it is time for them to come in and ensure that they prevent this from happening. But I think as well, the role of this task team would be to ensure that they go down to the people, look at the potential of any form of or any threat to the lives of the people, maybe to areas where there seem to be some political differences, and then they must actually act on that. But beyond that, I think it's the responsibility of us as citizens, as members of different political parties, to say it is important that we must start appreciating and recognize the existence of other political parties and say, even though we differ, we can still allow other parties to exist, and then they exercise their rights as citizens to join parties of their choice. And I think that is one important message that all South Africans must try their best to embrace.
Now, as you said, that political killings have been occurring in South Africa, even before 1994, especially during election time. Now, how does the government go about changing this kind of mindset that has been, instilled in citizens' heads, for over 12 years now? Do you think that this is possible to change this mindset?
Well, I think it's all about the mindset, as you said. In South Africa, we're lucky that, when we got our democracy, it was through negotiations, wherein two differing parties came together and agreed that we should actually move forward. But I think it's also the responsibility of all of us to say, a lot of people are being killed during elections. What then do we do as society? But I think as well, the huge responsibility has to lie with political party leaders, that the kind of message that they send to the public out there should also include some element of political tolerance. And indeed, it is true that when you belong to different parties, obviously you are competing, and in some instances it can lead to conflict. But I think we can't allow a situation where conflict has to lead to the death of other members of society. I think that is also out. But at the same time, you need political parties themselves as well to find a way of managing their list processes, on how do they manage the nomination processes. Because it is not only about different parties fighting against each other. In some instances, it is within political parties that members of the same political parties will compete for positions, and when you see somebody as a threat, you end up having to ensure that this person is permanently removed from society. And I think that is one area where political parties and political leaders themselves must come in and assist South Africa to prevent that from happening again.
Now, in your professional opinion, what can you conclude is the reason for, these political killings? I mean, many of these political killings are occurring in KwaZulu-Natal specifically, and within the ANC, members. What is the reason behind this, this infighting of this, and as you said, this nomination process? It obviously isn't going according to plan, as, people are taking lives for this.
Well, I think it's important to note that when one is given a responsibility, a public responsibility, being a councillor, being serving in the at a provincial level and at national level, you're given the authority by citizens to decide for them, but also it's about the allocation of resources. So obviously some people, actually most people in South Africa, see this as an access to resources. Firstly, it's about power, access to resources, and obviously everybody would love to access this power. And I think it's time now for political parties themselves to come in and ensure that they do their best to prevent this from happening. But this kind of competitions should actually be very healthy and ensure that we must prevent the killings of our leaders in South Africa.
The types of killings that are occurring can be classified as assassinations, as many of the identities of the perpetrators are not known in these cases, you know, due to poisoning or gunshot from a far away or something like that. How can we expect to bring these people to book when right now these cases are just being left because the identities aren't known and due to a lack of evidence?
I think what becomes a bit of a problem is the fact that you have a community leader that is leading a vast portion of the land, having a number of people there. And because there are several groups within the community that will support this candidate and the other one supporting this other candidate, you end up not knowing exactly who these perpetrators are, especially in the, looking at the fact that most of these things happen at night when nobody is available to become witnesses and so on and so on. But also, you would also observe that they seem to be, some seem to be well organized, and the manner in which they're actually being executed, you end up not getting any trace of where they're actually coming from. But I think as well, that is where the task team has to come in, to say they've identified this kind of a problem, and I think they must come with their best strategies to ensure that this kind of killings don't happen again.
And do you think that this will be successful?
Well, it's quite difficult to tell. I don't want to say that criminals are also very much advanced, but I think we've got a very advanced systems within our police or security cluster in the country that can prevent this from coming. But I think as well, if they are there, these kind of killings I think they can be well minimized, and a lot of lives can still be saved.
Now, you were talking about witnesses. If people do come forward with this information, how will the task team protect these people?
Well, that is one other serious area that becomes a huge concern to most citizens in the country. You have had a lot of killings that happened, assassinations that happened, and they would actually also drag on and take a longer period of time, and some of the witnesses get intimidated, and the cases end up being thrown out of the window. But at the same time, there are some few cases of assassinations in which perpetrators have been brought to book, and I hope at this time maybe the police minister has developed the best strategy to ensure that the perpetrators are actually being brought to book, and we don't want to see this happening again.
Well, hopefully the task team is successful. Ms. Ndou, thank you so much for your time here on ANN7. That was a political analyst, Levy Ndou, talking about the police minister's concerns over the rise in political killings, and he has now set up a task team to deal with this.